Untitled Chapter is pushing in the going into the upper 30s now with its existence, and it's been around to really kind of offset a problem that corporate America still has today, which is there's not enough Black and brown and women in security as itself, not just in security, in IT as a whole. So this organization was developed in giving us a space where we can network with people that look like us, have conversations with people that are in the business that look like us, and possibly give us coaching and guidance so we can become that future IT leader. Um, and that's who we are as a whole. So those of you who don't know us, please join. It's probably the best $100 you spend all year. And you can have some great conversations and some great networking. And you can build the network you need to drive your career in technology forward. Let's take a look at tonight. So from now to 6:10, we'll have people arriving. And then we'll do a welcome and introductions for myself. That'll be myself welcoming the people that we're going to have speaker. Otha is one of the SMEs, and I thank him for taking his time out of his busy schedule to join us tonight. And hopefully Eric can make it. He did say he was, and he'll be doing a presentation. And then we'll have a panel discussion and really talk about cybersecurity as a whole. You know, what the opportunities is, what does the business look like as a whole, and where we are current state. And I'm going to talk to Otha and get him to talk about cybersecurity in future state and what are the opportunities and maybe what are some of the things we should start looking at getting down the road. And then we'll do wrap up and close for the night. I am not the president. I'm the past president. John Coleman is the current president. And he was educated right here at Roosevelt University. So if you need anything with him, please reach out to BDPA and John Coleman on LinkedIn if you need to. So the evolution of BDPA started back in 1975, and here we are in 2020. We've gone through a number of evolutions. I think the next evolution for BDPA is really how do we stay in existence today? How do we stay current? BDPA used to be the only organization in town that was serving Black and brown people from a technology perspective. There are a number of organizations out there now that are serving in different capacities Black and brown people and helping with certifications and education. I say that many are good to get involved with, but there's one mainstay would be BDPA because they've been around for a long time and they're going to be here for a long time going forward from a national perspective. So you look at us, who are we? We're down to about 30 chapters. Unfortunately, that number has decreased. I'm not saying it as I'm proud of it. I'm just saying it because here's the gap. We are not volunteering as much as we used to. And of course, corporate America is not donating like they used to. So that's caused some chapters to go out of existence. This organization survives on volunteers. We're 100% volunteer. So if you're thinking about how can I give back, this could be one of the ways that you give back, which matters, which you can give back in a way that BDPA changes lives. And so when you start looking at years in existence, as I said, a 40 plus, our total membership base from a national perspective is 1,200. Those numbers should be higher. I'm not even going to squander any words about it. It should be higher. Our gender, 58% male, 42% female. And our corporate sponsors, unfortunately, again, this number is down. We're down to 80 now, right? Classroom to the boardroom. This is something that BDPA has talked to for a long time. It's important. We need to bring people in as we do with our youth programs, our high school programs. We try to keep in touch with them through college and then into the adult and even entrepreneurs. So there's something for everyone at BDPA. technology growth and development. As you know, BDPA stands for Black Data Processing. Data processing is no longer current, but now we've moved into digital because we understand that that's the backbone of technology and innovation today. And that's what we try to make sure that we bring people into and help them wrap their arms around where we're going forward with the digital community. And I'm going to wrap with that. Now, has Eric joined at all?
Doesn't appear.
Okay. So what we'll do then is we'll get out of this. I'll stop sharing. And what we can do is we can start a conversation around security. And I see Karen is here, and I'm going to pick on Karen a little bit to have some conversation because she's done some things, Sabrina, that I think you would be interested in. So I'm going to have Karen, can you come show yourself and turn your mic on, unmute yourself?
I can unmute myself. I can't show myself though, because I'm not in an area where I can do that.
Okay.
So, but good
That's
afternoon
fine.
to everyone.
That's fine. So the reason I wanted you to unmute yourself is Sabrina had her foot, well, I'm gonna say had her toe in security some time ago. She was urged to go a different route with her career, and now she's anxious to come back. Could you talk about a little bit about your march? Because yours is fairly recent. You came into security and you're doing very well from what I can remember. Can you talk a little bit about your journey?
Well, yes, my journey began about 6 or 7 years ago. I'd already been in the IT space for going on 20 something years in the software quality assurance and test space, and my skills I just wanted to transfer my skills to get back into an IT position in corporate America. So I decided to take some classes and also attend a boot camp to get there, and I that's pretty much how I got into cybersecurity. Um, and ramped up fairly quickly because of my prior knowledge in the IT space. Uh, However, you don't need to have prior IT knowledge. It would be great. Uh, my education really came out of two spaces, one being Illinois Institute of Technology, where I took a cybersecurity, it's like a master's program certificate class. So it really had to do with like three classes introduction. One was a networking class, the other was a lab, and another had to do with governance and compliance. So when you're doing assessments and computing and technology assessment, security posture assessments for companies. So that was pretty much like an introduction into the broad field of cybersecurity. And at the same time, I also attended about a 12-week boot camp here in Illinois, but they've also branched out to where you can attend virtually or online, and that is called Evolve Security Academy. And that pretty much gave me a view into all of the 7 most popular domains within cybersecurity, and that I would credit that as well as BDPA and their special interest groups that they have concerning cybersecurity. I would credit both of those as giving me my head start.
Mm-hmm. And what's your title now with the company you're with?
I'm what's known as a security analyst.
Mm-hmm. And
And
so, without revealing your exact numbers, let's talk about, I know you said the journey started 7 years ago, and you've really kind of really merged into the cyber world from a career perspective. Has it been 3 years now?
4 years, actually,
4 years?
since
So
2016.
talk about from a percentage standpoint how your income has increased over the years.
Uh, it's it's increased. What? Well, it's probably doubled. Yeah,
Say that again.
it's doubled.
It's doubled. Okay. And what is your expectation of your salary growth in the next 4 years?
I expect I'll be in the. It should double again.
Okay. I agree with you. So yeah. So just wanted you to share that because I think, and I'm going to have Otha chime in now a little bit because not only is he an expert in this space with Cisco, he actually teaches a class every other week and helping people make that transition from where they are into the cyberspace and the network space. So Otha, if you can talk a little bit about a couple of things. First, talk about the program, and I believe it's a program that changes lives, and then talk a little bit more about that.
Okay. Thanks, Reggie. So the program that he's referring to is the BDPA Special Interest Group, and this is the same one that Karen alluded to as well. And so we meet every other week. We normally will meet on Sunday, but with COVID, we've been meeting online. So we meet every other Tuesday from 8:30 to about, we try to wrap up around 10:30, just because being virtual, we have an audience from multiple countries now. So we try to be cognitive of the time zone. So during this program, we co-host it with Cisco Systems, and it's not just Cisco people or BDPA people. It's a very good networking group as far as security professionals, where you can broaden your network and get multiple job opportunities as well. So it's very hands-on, where we encourage you to participate, build out a lab, and build those skill set that's needed to be successful in this career. We also prep you with resume writing, interview tactics and techniques, tips and tricks as far as when you get that job, how do you maintain that sense of excellence and stand out amongst your peers?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So this is a program that someone with very little technology experience can get into, or somebody that you would expect that has a lot of experience, or both?
Good question. So both. So we have individuals in high school, from college to traditional students, non-traditional students, individuals who are trying to change their job, right? To get into cybersecurity, they may be in management, they may be in IT help desk support. So it's definitely a broad spectrum of individuals that attend. And we get to the point now where, since it's virtual, we don't have the capability of, we used to have a philosophy of, each one teach one as far as when we're presenting in this classroom environment. So now what we do, we post the classes. We just started posting the classes online as well. So if somebody comes in, they can actually look at the previous classes as well, so they won't feel too bad about not being, first time attending that particular meeting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have a pretty good success rate as far as getting individual jobs. And I think that's the key, because certifications are great, and, degrees are wonderful as well. And I'm not going to talk bad about degrees because I have a bunch of them. But the main thing that we try to strive and push is having the capability of really knowing your stuff. So when you walk into that interview, you are capable of giving that $100,000 answer, right? So you have to have a depth of the answer. We don't want, what is IT? Or when you're interviewing for a job, is troubleshooting a computer, that answer, that 50,000 is, is the light on? Is it blinking? That $100,000 answer is, okay, I'm troubleshooting, is the three-way handshake being established? And to get a little bit more detail, that way the person knows that you know your stuff.
And so you've been now doing this class, running this program for how long now?
I think we started in 2002. And actually, yeah, we did start in 2002 dealing with strictly Cisco. And then after Cisco, around about 2006, 2007, we started doing security, cybersecurity. And then from that, it kind of branched out to, since most of the security tools are run on Linux, a lot of people didn't have a deep background in Linux. So then we branched out and started teaching Linux as well. Then we kind of grew into virtualization. So now we've kind of backtracked to get now focusing strictly on security, just because the topic is hot, and then also dealing with cloud security as well, and Dockers and containers and some of the newer things. We still touch on Cisco if somebody needs a foundation and has that question to ask, but now since the need mainly is dealing with cybersecurity, that's what we primarily focus on.
So let's talk a little bit about, because I know I heard you say you've got high school, you've got some college age students. Sounds like you have some adult students as well.
Correct.
When you take a look at someone coming out of your program and getting that first job, what's the salary range that they could expect to see when they hit the streets? So
what I tell individuals that they should be looking for something between entry level 75,000 to at least 85,000. I tell everyone that I meet, if you're in cybersecurity or even Cisco networking, you should be 3 jobs away from making $150,000. Now, if you're not making $150,000, that's on you, because we have some individuals that are very good. They just, from a confidence perspective, or they don't think they can make that amount of money, they kind of shy away from it. But yeah, and we have individuals who no experience whatsoever. Right? We just had a gentleman, older student. Well, I can't say an older student. He's a grown man. He's in his 45-ish age range, right? No cybersecurity experience whatsoever. He had project management experience and wanted to get in security. So we run a program in conjunction with Inglewood. So he would come and he would sit in the classroom, and we did it about 8 weeks. And after that, we did another kind of run of the program for another 6 weeks. And he applied for a job working at a bank in the foreign country, Malaysia. And his interview was simply like this. Management background is very strong, but you don't have a lot of cybersecurity experience. And, he's just listening to this guy that's interviewing him, give him that spiel that you're good, but you're not that good. We're looking for somebody in cybersecurity. So as this guy is telling him he doesn't have experience, the guy told him, well, did you know that your username and password is out there on the internet? And secondly, do you know that the portal that people sign in for the bank has cross-site scripting and has been vulnerable since 2014? And the guy was like, okay, you're hired. So not depending on your experience, because you have to think about it, I think it was the company Hacker One says that 80% of hackers are self-taught. So this is the age that we're living in. And when you think about cybersecurity, it's kind of the perfect field, I think, for people of color, minorities to get into. Because one, if you have a criminal record, a felony or whatnot, that's like a badge of honor. Two, you don't even have to, you can be as awkward and weird and not speak the King's English. That's a badge of honor. And then you don't have to take a drug test, right? So those are the 3 things when you think about in our community are the things that kind of hinder us from getting a job. And so when you look at, particularly when I do work in Inglewood and now I'm in a program that's kind of a first start, you have people who have felons and they may have a drug addiction problem or they may have been getting off of drugs, but okay, in the cybersecurity industry, I work with guys who wear Captain America shirts every day, and it's the norm, right? And you're like, man, I hope it's a different one, but probably the same one, right? So it's a different culture when you deal with IT and in particular cybersecurity.
Wow. So Sabrina, I'm gonna jump to you real quick, because I know you confessed early on when this started that you had a desire to move from where you are now into cyber. So right now, do you know what you want to do and the steps you need to take?
I do not. I do not know a clear path, but I will find out.
Okay. So one clear path is to connect with Otha and his program and get involved. That would be the one place I'd tell you to start and just continue to stay in that space. And Otha, could you elaborate on, I know you talked about this, gentleman, there was an 8-week program, 6-week program for a novice, someone not knowing anything about technology. How long would you say start to finish could someone get certified and be employed making that $75,000 a year?
Can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Otha, for what you were talking about with the different challenges that people in our community have and so forth, one of the things I try to tell people as someone that's hired and fired for 30 some odd years, if you look at a job description and you don't meet all of the qualifications, as long as you meet a good number of them, apply. There's a lot of things that are thrown in those job descriptions that are people self-disqualify for the position. They may have 80% of the qualifications and the 20% were thrown in there, and people will say, oh, I can't do this particular thing, and don't apply for the job. Apply, please.
Yeah. And I'm a stick pin in that real well because, Brian, I couldn't agree with you more. And if you go back and you think about what Otha just said, this gentleman didn't have a depth of experience in cyber. But yet in the interview, he talked and he said the right things about what was going on in order to get hired. And I can go back to my early 20s, and I was just trying to get a job, making some money, and it was for a salesman, for a new car salesman. I remember calling the place to fill out an application. Okay, I'm telling my age, right? Had to fill out an application. The guy called me and we were talking, and he says, well, I like your answers, but you're awfully young. You know, you're 21. He says, we were actually looking for someone older. And I paused for a minute and I said, oh, that's interesting. I said, I actually thought you were looking for someone that was very capable of doing the job. Dead silent. Guess what? I got hired. So I can't agree with Brian more. I can't agree with Otha more. Don't count yourself out because you don't have everything. If you go out on many of these corporations' job boards, you'll see they have a laundry list of open jobs. Why? Because they're looking for what they call the perfect candidate. Well, the perfect candidate is going to be the candidate that gives them the right answers, regardless of their total experience. That's just what it is. So you've got to find a way to get your resume in there, find a way to network and get your resume to bubble up to the top and get a conversation so you can have those conversations to win the interview. So just wanted to kind of talk about that. So now, Otha, back to you again. We're talking about the time that it might take a novice individual without any technology background to go from zero to job.
So just to answer that question and also to piggyback on what Brian said, as far as applying for jobs, I got my first job dealing with Cisco equipment and never even touched a piece of equipment in my life, right? So I had no experience whatsoever. I don't even think I had a certification at the time. But what I would do is go to Barnes & Noble when they were around, and I forgot the other name of the bookstore. It's not even around anymore. But I would just sit and read books, and I would just draw out configurations and practice typing the configs in Notepad because it all is command line. And the guys at Disco actually hired me. I had no experience whatsoever. So I definitely agree. If you have some of the experience, some of the things, definitely apply, because it's like a Christmas wish list, and you never get what you want for Christmas. So going back to the time that it takes somebody that's a novice, it depends upon how well they are capable and passionate about their craft, right? So I spend about 4 or 5 hours a day just perfecting my craft. And this is not even just understanding Cisco technology. It's just dealing with cybersecurity in general. Part of the reason why I do the things that I do with the SIG is that it helps me maintain a certain level with my craft. So I think between that person, what they should do is look at 4 or 5 jobs, go to Indeed.com, because they will post a salary, and you find 4 or 5 jobs that you want, and you look at the common denominator skill set in cybersecurity, and that's what you study. And you spend 4 or 5 hours a day on that, and in, a couple of months, you should be able to get your job doing something. But you have to live it, breathe it, and practice it. If you're sitting around and, I think this year was the first time I've actually watched a full basketball game in the NBA because I just want to see if LeBron was going to win it. And I didn't know anybody else on the team except LeBron. And I was shocked that they had other players that I knew. And it just shows you that my mindset is not dealing with basketball and entertainment. I really maintain a schedule to try to figure out what I'm inputting in my mind, which is more important. And then when I was watching the game, I'm still kind of studying and reading stuff anyway, so it's kind of like background noise. So if you're dedicated and spend, make you a study schedule, and based upon that study schedule, you time it out. In addition to that, you get you a training budget. So, the younger guys, the children, students, I always tell them, look, don't tell your mom and dad what you want for Christmas. Just say you want some money so you can take a class, right? And that way, because sometimes these classes, and I don't mean the traditional college class, I mean like a class that you may find, somebody at one of these security conferences who's teaching, you get kind of the latest and the greatest information, right? Because if you go to a university, and I've taught at a university, it's kind of old, depending upon the instructor, okay? If they add their own little pizzazz to the class to make sure the students are up to date. So when Karen's talking about the guys that evolve security, they have a reputation of doing that. It's just not old material that they've learning attacks, using Windows XP as their virtual machine to play around with it. So I give you 2 months, and the reason I said that because, well, that guy did 16 weeks. Let's say 16 weeks, a couple of months. You should have your first job. An entry level, I remember an entry level job in Linux paid like $45 an hour. So you can imagine what it is for cybersecurity. I wasn't talking to, Cisco has a relationship with Accenture. And Accenture, we were on the call, and we were talking about the struggles of finding people that are cybersecurity experienced. And Accenture says that their customers are willing to hire people who are unqualified because they can't find people. In 2021, they said it's going to be a 3.5 million shortage of cybersecurity individuals. So you can imagine that number didn't decrease, it increased. And then now with everyone working from home, you have this new remote workforce. People now are more concerned about cybersecurity. And then when you think about going to the dark side of the force, you can make more money doing cybercrime than the global drug trade. So hypothetically, if I was a student and I went to Stanford and I got a PhD in cryptography and I got a bunch of student loans, why would I go work for somebody like Google and they're going to pay me maybe $100,000? When I got a guy who, the new hacker security economy may pay me $200,000 or a percentage of what they get. And that's illegally. But legally, there's people who find exploits, and exploits are just software vulnerabilities in the wild. You can get up to $2 million legal. Companies will pay you because what they do, they repackage it and they sell it to the government or they sell it to other companies or antivirus companies, right? So you can not have a job at all and just work from a contract, self-employed in bug bounty programs, and you can make a pretty good living at it. Or you can go to the dark side of the force and make a very good living out of it. So it just kind of depends upon your morals, but then also how much time you put into it. Because like I say, most hackers are self-taught. The guy that supposedly hacked Target or the software was a kid. He got into cybersecurity because he was always in the friend zone. So he decided that he's going to get a girlfriend in the friend zone by hacking girls' boyfriend's passwords on Facebook to show him that, oh, he's cheating on you. And then he just evolved his game to start writing code and software. And then he wrote some code or whatever that was used in a target attack. So everyone has a different take on it. But if you practice playing the piano an hour, 2 hours a day, you can be better than the person who spends only 30 minutes. So you practice hacking, depending upon what you want, and the field is so large, you'll get good at it. You have people who do auditing and compliance because somebody has to write those rules to say when you log on with a corporate laptop that you can't go to job sites or porn sites on the corporate laptop. Somebody has to write that policy. And most people don't want to write that policy. Two things I learned about IT people. They don't like to write and they don't like to speak. So if that's your niche, doing public speaking and writing, technical writing, you can do pretty good at it because somebody has to write the policy. People have to be PCI compliant. So if you go in and swipe that credit card at some company, somebody has to say they're following the standards to make sure that no hacker can get in. Somebody has to go around and check that and audit it. That's a job, $75,000 starting off, right? So sometimes we think about security. We think about that guy on Mr. Robot, or we saw a James Bond movie, and there's always that guy in a chair, and he's hacking away 2 minutes to 3 minutes, and he hacked the blocks, and he's telling people to go right or left because he hacked the security cameras. A lot of people may not want to do that. You know, a lot of people say, you know what, I just want to manage a team that can do that. Or I just want to write the book or the manual for somebody's firewall or software.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's an interesting space, and I know you talked a lot about the different types of work that's involved in this space. But one of the things that I want us to remember, the cybersecurity space as it is defined today is new. Think of it. What, 8 years ago, did you ever hear of a CISO? You know, that role is new. And why is it new? Well, because it started out where people were CTOs or they were VPs and they were attached, but they needed to have that person that can talk about cyber protection sitting at the decision table. So that made that happen. So the next thing that happened was, just like any other CC executive, he had to have a team of people, directors, senior directors, etc. Well, the problem that Otha just stated is there's not enough talent to fill all the roles today, and there won't be, based on the people that are getting educated today, there won't be enough people right now that are going to fill the roles that they see coming up in 2021 and beyond. So this is really, when I said earlier, we're going to talk about this space because there is nothing but opportunity that sits in this cyberspace, right? Whether that's audit, governance, etc., right? There's a lot of things that you can wrap your arms around. And you know, Karen talked about it a little bit when she talked about her march from where she was to where she is now. And Sabrina mentioned at the beginning of this that she wants to make a move from that whole project management space into cyber. Well, I think she's got a huge edge. Why? Number one, she's female, right? There's not enough females in the space as it is, and corporate America knows that. So they're going to be looking for talented females. But the other piece that Sabrina has that maybe some of the other people don't have coming into this space, Otha alluded to it. They don't like to write and they don't like to talk. Sabrina's already got that piece of her career well rounded. She's used to talking, speaking, directing, managing. So now if she takes that and adds the cybersecurity, I mean, there's nothing but upside to her potential for her career. So I hope she's sitting there getting excited as I'm talking about this because I'm getting excited for her.
Very much so.
Otha, would you like to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes when individuals get into the cybersecurity or they change fields of expertise, they forget what they already know, right? That could be an advantage to them. And when you're talking about Sabrina's background, there's something that I recently got into was dealing with cybersecurity sales, right? And so, one, being a woman, because we're living in a society where most of the people in the IT field they're men, predominantly men. So if you're a woman, you have a leg up because they want to see a woman, right? And then two, you already have that you can speak the language, you can talk the talk, you have project management, so you can know how to manage and take ownership of a meeting, right? And that goes a long way. And so sometimes, like we say, when we talk about what path I'm going to go to, what path individual, security sales is a very lucrative field, right? You can still maintain that level of expertise. You still know your stuff, but the money that you make will be, it's crazy. You know, you're making the money as such as a pharmaceutical rep or something. So the field is very wide. You just have to take an assessment of your skill set and figure out which ones do I want to take over to this new field. And then once you find that, it'll be easier. You know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a gentleman who comes to the SIG meetings, and we were talking. He's an older gentleman, and he was saying how he did mainframes in assembly, right? And most people may not even remember what assembly is, but he's trying to do, you know, security ethical hacking course, the Security Plus. And I said, look, I just spent $5,000 on a class to teach me assembly. So you already know what you know, and I'm trying to get there. So it's about retooling what you actually know and understanding in the industry that, look, assembly is hot because most malware analysts, they need to know assembly. They need to know move and jump and EXP and all this stuff that I'm trying to figure out, but you have a long history of experience with this. You can get a job at just analyzing malware because most malware is going to be written in assembly. That's what they do. They break it down. So when I told him that, he was shocked because he's going a long route to get to a career in cybersecurity when it's like just beef up your malware analysis skill. You already have a leg up on the next individual because you know assembly, and you can't go into DePaul or Chicago State University or any school and say, I want to take a class on assembly, because it's not going to happen, right? So those are the things that you have to think about, is to take an assessment of your skill set. When I got into cybersecurity, I was always interested in it. My background was Cisco, routing and switching. So I just kind of added on the layers to that. And then when I started working for Cisco, I said, I get to the point where I only want to do cybersecurity. And that opportunity presented itself, and I just kind of took it and ran with it. So, you know, you definitely have to assess your current skill set. You know, you don't have to go, and like I say, college is great, but I see a lot of people, they take I want to go to DePaul and they get a certificate program in cybersecurity, information awareness, blah, 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 blah. You know, and then they'll take out a student loans or whatever it does and just take 16 weeks or 20 weeks, and you can just learn that in the book. Some things you can learn in the book. Now, you don't want somebody who's going to do open heart surgery and just learn it on his own, but with cybersecurity, you can do that. You can just get a couple of books. YouTube University, Udemy has some excellent courses as well, and you can really carve out a niche for yourself and learn this material. And then just practice, practice, practice.
You know, man, you said so much, and so we often forget about the things we already know. We often forget about the skill sets we have that are easily transferable. And so when I look at technology, I get real excited. Why? When we think about the days of strong manufacturing, right? Back when, okay, many of you guys weren't born yet, but back when I was in high school, you know, we always had people that weren't going to go to college. They knew it. I mean, they just didn't feel college was for them, right? But they knew that they can go down the street to their with their Uncle Bill, who had a gas station, and they can become a mechanic. They knew that they can call their aunt so and so that can get them on at Chrysler or Ford or GM and get them a good job, and they can buy homes and raise families. Well, with the demise of manufacturing, you know, I think the black and brown community started to fall apart. Why? Because there was no hope. There was no options for us, the ones who thought that college wasn't the right way to go. Well, again, as I knew he would, Otha just shared another great tidbit. You don't necessarily need a degree today. There was a study done by Ernst & Young a few years ago where they took a non-degree team and a degree team, and they matched them in a competition. The non-degree team kicked the degree teams, you know what. So what happened? Ernst & Young went back and started looking at the requirements that they had out there for some of their jobs, and they started to take out degree required, and they're looking for certs, and they're looking for that individual that can be innovative and take chances and make sure that they're moving in the right direction. That's really what they want in technology. So I think that we, in this community we have, many of us, especially the younger generation, I think they're born technologists, because even the little bit I know about technology, my son, when he was younger, I'd give him anything and he'd just fix it for me. Hey, go set up the Wi-Fi, go do this, go do that. And instantly he'd come back, yeah, I did that already, Dad. So there is a huge opportunity for not just for us on this on this WebEx and in this conversation. We need to start talking to others about the opportunities in technology, because that's the one way that we can ensure that we bring more Black and brown people in on this. Because if you had a secret, and that secret was involving how somebody can have thousands of dollars, would you want to share it with your cousins, your friends, and your family? Well, that's what this is. This is, when you look at technology today, it is a secret that we can start sharing with our family members and our friends about how they can make a lot of money. And that secret is broken down into increments and different disciplines. And this particular discipline of security and cybersecurity, depending on how you want to frame it, there are a ton of jobs that are available. And there are some jobs right now that are out there in this space that weren't out there 3 years ago. Otha, can you elaborate on some of those? I think you probably know more about them than I do.
And that's a very good perspective. And some of the things that we've been doing in Inglewood is we have a couple of high school students now who, they're not going to college. And the reason why they're not going to college is because they want to take time out to do cybersecurity. And these individuals, one of the individuals' father is a professor, so he's very academically inclined. But he's like, look, if my son wants to take a year, 2 years off to do cybersecurity, he's very good, then have at it. And so we give him a support system where he can be very good at his job, right? And he's gotten so good as far as being self-studying that sometimes he doesn't even come to the sessions because he's like, it's boring, So it just all depends upon that person's drive. And when you're talking about jobs that, that's not out there, one is cloud security, right? So if you do a Indeed search on cloud security in Illinois, you'll come with probably between 2,000 and 3,000 jobs. And it's just, you can't ask for somebody with 10 years of experience. Now you can ask. That doesn't mean you're going to get somebody with 10 years of experience in cloud security, because the cloud as we know it has changed, right? So the way AWS is now, or Azure cloud, completely different. So there's a lot of opportunities, and companies know this stuff. So give an example. Walgreens had two positions, a vulnerability manager and one dealing with cloud security. Both of these job descriptions, the typical verbiage, but it got to the point where it said a bachelor's degree in computer science, finance, technology, and some other stuff. And then it got to the point near the end of the sentence where it said high school diploma or equivalent. So I'm talking to young students and say, what's equivalent to a high school diploma? One guy raised his hand, GED. So if you have a GED, and these jobs are over $110,000. So this is Walgreens. So you can say, oh, well, if you got a high school diploma or GED, you work in a Walgreens, the first thing you're going to pop in your mind, this guy's putting boxes on a shelf or something, right? Not running the cloud security program, or vulnerabilities, trying to find stuff that's in the environment. So this industry has changed so much, because years ago, when you think about hacking, it was only a computer and maybe the telephone. Right? Those are the two things that people did. And the telephone hacking are called phone phreaking, because it was famous. Captain Crunch was on the box back in the day. You can blow it in the phone, the tones are hit, and you can make long distance phone calls. So you only had two avenues. Now with IoT, you have so many things to actually compromise. So a couple of years ago, a casino in Europe was compromised, hacked, the high-end roller database, personal information, names, credit card, all that stuff was hacked. They got in through a fish tank. It was a fish tank because it had a thermostat in it. When you look at Target, Target was compromised because of the HVAC. So basically the air conditioning. They got hacked because of the air conditioning. Had a customer was hacked because of the return tray machine in the cafeteria. Who would think that was connected to the network, right? You can't put antivirus on the return tray machine in the cafeteria. McAfee semantics is not going to work. So these bad guys are disguising themselves very good to intercept this traffic. So not just understanding IoT, but the traditional manufacturing, they call it OT, technology. These are the things that have to look at. You look at the mobile devices as well. Smart TVs, ransomware is still hot. Cryptocurrency as well is hot, because now instead of me trying to create a cryptocurrency rig to generate this stuff, I'm just going to hack a bunch of computers and use that horsepower to actually do my my Bitcoin mining or whatever. So the industry is so much just because of the fact that the industry is changing. You have people who sell VPN services, right? You know, you see the stuff about use a VPN and NORAD or whomever, but then you have the free VPN. So most IT people say, hey, it's just a free VPN. I'm going to get it. I'm going to use it. But those free VPNs, they use your IP address for criminal activity. Not all of them, but the majority of them, because they have these proxy servers where real criminals and bad guys want to be able to hide the IP address. So I can't block Xfinity. You know, a company's not going to block that. They're not going to block Microsoft. They're not going to block AT&T. So I want you to use your VPN on your computer. We're going to tunnel it through AT&T and whoever, and we're going to use that information. Just brokering criminal activity is hot as well. You know, I remember one website used to call HackerList. I don't remember if it's still up, but it was kind of the heyday of Craigslist, so now here's HackerList. Mm-hmm. So the job stuff is changing just because of the fact that, you know, security is changing. There's so many more devices that can be compromised, and then the regulation of those particular devices. You have this thing called open source threat intelligence, because companies, when they go to, you know, I'm a big Fortune 500 company. I'm trying to open up a company in Afghanistan or something. You know, I need to know the lay of the land. What are they saying about in Afghanistan? What is the native language? I need somebody to research the threats, physically, cyber related to me opening an office in there. So you have to have somebody to do that. They have something called physical security. Physical security is this: you pay somebody to go by your job and see if you can get in. Now, when I was growing up, they called it breaking and entering. Now they call it physical security, and you get paid $1,500 to $2,500 a day just to do that. And they just go, when they check the doors to see if they're locked, they dress up sometimes in you know, a maintenance outfit and see if they can talk their way in. Because if I can talk my way into the data center and pull out a hard drive, I don't have to hack through a firewall, IPS devices, EDR, EPR, whatever the acronym of the day is. So there's people who just practice, breaking and entering. And you know what? We're going to pay you $1,500 and give us a report afterwards and tell us what we need to do. So these are jobs that we never would have thought about, you know. You have people, you know, hopefully none of us have done this, but, you know, fake Facebook pages, you know, that's phishing, catfishing. There are people that actually do that, right? They get paid to do that, because what I'm going to do, I'm going to set up a couple of fake Facebook pages. I'm going to now start interacting with terrorists or whomever, and now befriend them, because you know what? I don't have to go to a meeting. I just befriend them, and we just do a Zoom call, and we're talking about some sort of plot. And the government would pay you to do that. So now, from catfishing, which is, you know, trying to get a date on Tinder, to actually being able to be a cyber spy, you can get money for that. Now, you have to make sure that your your Facebook page has the picture, you know, your Facebook page has stuff on it. And when I was teaching at ITT Tech, my students, that was the first thing we did, first day of class, create a Facebook page and see how many people you can get to join, right, to become your friend. Most of the guys did a woman because they knew guys going to always join a woman. Some people did an older gentleman because they knew if I'm an older gentleman who don't know how to really use and navigate Facebook, so I'm just befriending people to ask them, look, I need to talk to my grandkids, and sorry, I clicked on you wrong. People going to feel sorry for them, right? So they have all these elaborate backstories. But the reason why I did that is because, one, you get paid as a job to do it. And two, you always need in cybersecurity, depending upon what field you want to go into, you want to have maybe a second, third, or fourth account anyway. So those are some of the avenues of the things that you were never thought of. When you hear about people, with Antifa or these guys who are infiltrating Black Lives Matter, and what they're trying to do is do the violent protest. The FBI department, they have people because everything's being online, so they kind of interject themselves. They join a group, they get a person's page, and now they just be a member of the group. And sometimes I've done it when I was threat hunting to actually do the exact same thing. Pays very well, to have a Facebook page and you can find out when there's someone, trying to meet up and do something nefarious.
Speaking of nefarious, one of the things that I just was recently reading is another thing that's growing is somebody approaching you because you work for a company and offering you large sums of money, and they're using you to take something in like a virus or something like that. Can you elaborate on that?
So people do that. So some people, and that kind of goes back to phishing and trying to get into someone's company, right? So back in the day, I can walk in, years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I can walk into a company, actually use a restroom, they'll let me use a restroom, and I can leave a CD on the floor in the bathroom and a sleeve, and it says like HR salary. Somebody's going to take that and put it in their computer back in the day just to see the salary of the coworkers, right? And lo and behold, there's a virus. Same thing with the Iranian nuclear stuff, right? That it was a USB drive plugged into, and then they got compromised. So some people will tell you, one of the things, exercise I do with companies, I look for people on LinkedIn, and from LinkedIn I go into Facebook, and then I'll see, okay, if I was a bad guy, let me compromise this person. Say, oh, I got a picture of you doing something. I don't want any money. I just want you to make sure that when you log into the computer, I want you to just click on this link, right? And once they click on that link, they know that your computer is compromised, but the person may not know it. He's like, look, if you want to tell me, you're not going to blackmail me and put out pictures or whatever, for my webcam, I'll click on the link for you when I go into the office, and they click on the link, they compromise, because corporate espionage is real big. Now some of these bad guys, they're very, I was at a SANS Institute training, and one of the things the guy told this story, so it's not my story, but it was a colonel. He didn't say what branch of the military. This colonel got a call from his son's school, or email from his son's school saying, look, there's been an accident, and you need to come pick up your child through his time zone based upon his last name. Now, there was an actual incident at this colonel's school. He goes, picks up his son, 6 months later to find out that they were hacked by that same email. So these bad guys were studying this colonel. They knew his family. They knew his habits. They knew that, oh, there's a incident at his school, his son's school. He needs to go pick him up. He's going to answer this email. Now, most of us will answer an email from our loved one, right, unless we just don't like them. But they knew the time and how to get to this particular person. For these guys, particular nation state, they know what they're doing. They do the social engineering. They study people, their habits, just like the CIA study people habits. Remember those old movies where you look at the FBI is profiling people, and they have a picture of one gangster. They have his lieutenants. And then the lieutenant, they have another branch of the family. The bad guys do that. Even the good guys do it. So there's a lot of stuff that You would be amazed at what the list that people will go to. There's this program called Mimikatz, and Mimikatz is probably, at the time, maybe 5 years ago, and even now, one of the best hacking tools around. It was known for hacking basically Active Directory. The guy that wrote this tool was invited to speak in Russia. He goes to Russia. He's speaking at this conference. He goes back into his hotel room, comes back early, and he sees people in his hotel room trying to find his laptop and his computer. So he leaves that one city, goes to another city. He actually gets kidnapped. He gives them the code, and then they let him go. So he releases the code in the wild because he didn't want them to have it and nobody else to have it. But they sent him an invitation to speak at a conference. They tell him when he went to the room because they wanted this particular code. So you have to think about the level of genius that these guys, the creativity that they would do. Not to badmouth Russia, but imagine companies hire people to do vulnerability assessments. You hire this company to do a vulnerability assessment. They come in, they find all this bad stuff. But they don't only tell you in the report, but they also release and sell the same information on the dark web. And this was actually a company that actually did that, was a Russian front. The company was called CyberSecurity. And they would hire people, go to recruit people who are Americans, right? But they didn't know that this data from these actual jobs that they were doing was being sold by somebody else in Mother Russia, right? So these are the things that you have to think about, that somebody comes and knocks on your door, want to audit your environment, may not necessarily be who they say they are. Or if they are, you don't know the company where it got started at. Because we see on the movies that there's always a front company for laundering money. Who would think there would be a front company for laundering it to go out and get legitimate jobs and use that information to make millions on the dark web?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of a story that I read about an email that was sent supposedly from the CEO to the CFO. And he said in this email, hey, we're going to make some donations and cut checks to these three nonprofit organizations. Well, the CFO thought, okay, so he started the process to cut the checks, but as he got to the last check, there was a question he had. So he, emailed his CEO and said, hey, about this other check, I wasn't clear on this. And he said, what are you doing? He says, I didn't send you an email to produce any, cut any checks to anybody like that. So luckily, the checks did not go out, but this guy got this email, and as Otha said, they study people, they study the organization, they understand how the communication goes. They put that together in a way that gentleman was going to cut those checks and send them out. So we have to be careful about emails that we open. We have to be careful about contest. You've won. Can you talk about that scam?
Regarding, your PayPal account, there was some weird activity on your PayPal account, and you want to go in and check your PayPal, right, or your Netflix account, because people sell those credentials. And, hopefully no one on this call, but we reuse passwords, right? And so your corporate password is probably the same password as your Chase or your Bank of America password, right? And bad guys know this, and good guys know this, right? But we get lazy sometimes. Everyone does it, right? As far as how many passwords can I have, right? If you were born in September, 2020, and that's your password, when it's time to get you a new password, it's going to be 2020 September, right? And then after that, when you got to renew, it's 2020 September with an exclamation mark at the end of it, right? Because we naturally reuse passwords all the time, and bad guys know this stuff. So you want to be mindful, and you don't want to say, well, I'm paranoid, but you do have to have a sense of being paranoid just to make sure you CYA. You got to cover yourself. You mentioned about individuals clicking on emails. There was another one of my customers. Guy, was working very hard, been at a company 5-10 years or whatever, and he gets a message from the CEO. and the CEO is actually recognizing him for all the good work that he's done for the company. And he's in like manufacturing, right, warehouse worker. But the problem was it was through WhatsApp app, that WhatsApp app application. No CEO is going to recognize you as an employee. He's going to send you a direct email, but this guy didn't know. So he clicked on links and stuff, and the company got compromised. So those are the things that you have to think about when you look at security awareness and security awareness training. Everybody is susceptible to click on something. You just have to figure it out what it is. And usually what bad guys will do is wait till you leave your network, and now you're not in your network, you're at home, and sometimes you have a split tunnel where you're halfway into your network and you're still on your home Wi-Fi or whatever, and you're susceptible to be compromised.
Mm-hmm. Great transition into the home question, because we've talked a lot about what happens in the corporate world and the job opportunities, and I think people online have a good sense for that. But one of the things that we have to realize is that small business, entrepreneurs, and personal attacks are up, especially since COVID. I think the number was it's up like 75%. So we at home also need to practice good cyber security regimes around our home and our personal business. So, Oath, if you could just talk a little bit about that and let people understand some of the basic things they can do at home, and also expand that into possibly the entrepreneurs that are maybe on the line, because I think it is a differentiator. If I'm an entrepreneur and I'm selling to corporate America, that one of the things that I can tell them as I'm talking about my company is that I have a cybersecurity plan and strategy in place, and therefore anything you share with me is going to be protected. And I can talk about my current state program as well as my future state program. That's going to carry a lot of weight as you're trying to get those larger contracts and you're asking that corporate account to trust you. So if you can elaborate on that, and could somebody mute their phone? We're getting some more feedback. Okay, go ahead, Oprah.
Sure. So for the things that you can do at home, quickly, everyone has Wi-Fi at home. You definitely want to make sure that you have an SSID. If you can have a portal page so people can log on, that's fine. The way I look at it from a security perspective, I think everyone's going to get hacked sooner or later. I have my corporate laptop, and then I have a laptop that's running Linux on it, so I can just reinstall it. Then I have a Windows laptop. My Windows laptop, I don't go to sites where I have to put in passwords that I like to use. I use Yahoo when I check my Yahoo email or something like that, but I don't go and check my banking stuff on that laptop or even my Linux laptop, right? I may use my corporate laptop just because I know from a malware perspective, I have some very good malware analysis programs on my machine, but I typically do my banking stuff from my phone. And on my phone, I don't put a bunch of applications and everything on that. I'm not clicking on link. I'm not on Facebook on my phone where I'm not doing any of that stuff, right? So my phone is probably my most secure device, right? When I go places, I make sure I VPN. And I just kind of watch what I go and watch what I click on. Somebody the other day was like, oh, yeah, if you got a Facebook account, they're going to there's a lawsuit in Illinois. I'm going to send you the link. I'm like, nah, you ain't got to send me the link. I'm not going to open it anyway. I'll just Google it and figure it out and to see if it's real or not. So those are some of the precautions that I take. Your password should be some sort of phrase or sentence. Most things now have where you can do two-factor authentication as well. There's a report that says 80% of breaches now deal with credentials, stolen credentials, which are rarely available on now even dark web, just the regular web that you can find through Google. Another thing too is just these data brokers. They have they have your name, right, your number and stuff. You can opt out to certain things. So I can't think of the name of them, but like Friend Finder, High School, those type of websites, they get that information from other websites. And you just need to spend maybe 30 minutes or so just kind of searching how to opt out those websites so your data won't get out there, right? As you notice now on my cell phone, I'm getting a lot more calls dealing with election stuff, right? I'm like, how did they get my phone number? So those are the things that you have to be mindful of. When you sign up for stuff, like I said, I have a Yahoo email account. When I go to places and I got to sign in and use an email address, that's what I use. Or I just make up one on the fly and see if they allow me to use that to get on that particular network. Just making sure that everything is patched on your computer at home. That will prevent a lot of stuff and have good malware. There's a lot of free programs. Well, I'm not gonna say a lot, but there's one called OpenDNS that you can use. They have at home use. You can use it for content filtering, and they'll block malware that's coming into your network command and control. There's another program called Immunet. Is made for Windows, and so you can use this on your computer as well. And it's very good at detecting malware. ESET has a version where you can download from a cloud and run the scan on your computer as well. So those are the things that I do, and I'm just mindful of what I click on. Your home use, there's some people that have the Fire Stick and they like to put Kodi on it, so you automatically get compromised and you put Kodi on that. But as long as you know that, then that's an acceptable risk that you take, right? From a small business perspective, from an entrepreneur, imagine this. The FBI at one point said, if you get hit with ransomware, pay it. Now they kind of said, we didn't say it, but, if you call them, they're going to tell you, they're not going to spend their resources on trying to track that stuff down, right? So imagine this. I don't know how many dentist offices there are in Chicago, but let's just say it's 100. And you go into your dentist office, you have an appointment, and most dentists make between $75,000 and $100,000 a month, right? With patients and the stuff that they charge it back to insurance. But imagine you go to the dentist, and they say, well, we can't get in because we have ransomware, right? They don't have IT staff and support. So what are they going to do? The ransomware says you got an hour to pay them $200. You know what they're going to do? Pay that $200. Mm-hmm. So there's 100 dentist offices. I get $200 from all of them. I'm doing pretty good because I know they're going to pay. You get corporations to pay. In the past year, you can look at the number of city governments, Atlanta being one of them. I think Baltimore, they're paying because they know, or Atlanta didn't pay, right? But they know that you might as well just pay. Imagine as you're chief medical officer for Rush Hospital or something. Somebody calls you up and says, you know what? You got 2 hours, and I'm going to turn off all the heart pumps in your environment, all the insulin pumps. I need $2,000. Now, how can they check to see if those things are compromised or not? They can't, not in 2 hours. What they're going to do, that's cash on hand for them. Oh, yeah, $2,000, pay them. You probably want in Bitcoins, or some of them want iTunes gift cards for whatever reason. But from a entrepreneur, right, particularly those dentist offices, those doctor offices, that's just Chicago. Imagine the suburbs. If I hit the dentist office, the doctor's offices, beauty supply, you can imagine how much money you can rack up on ransomware. But you can also think about being an IT support staff for security for those places as well. Mm-hmm. And once you do security, it boils down to, well, do they have a backup? Okay, well, I'm the backup administrator. Give me another $1,000 on a contract. I'll come in every month. I'll do a scan in your environment every month for $1,500. All scans are automated, done through the cloud. So guess what? You're just sitting at home and scheduling the scan, and you're getting $1,500 a month or $1,000 every month for 100 dentist offices or doctor offices, right? So taking what the bigger companies do and making it for the small businesses, affordable, that's key. Because sometimes we want to jump out and do the bigger things, but everyone's forgetting the small guy. Mm-hmm. If you have a bar now, and in the bar your point of sale system or Walgreens or something is compromised, your livelihood is, this is Friday night, post-COVID or pre-COVID, You're relying on your Friday night, Saturday, that's the weekend. That's where your money's at. You get an email saying $500, you're going to get that $500. Or what if you wake up in the morning and all of a sudden you go and you open up your Tesla and it doesn't work? And you get an email on your iPhone that's saying, you know what, you're going to have to pay me $1,000. Or you're just going to have to just take your Tesla to the scrap heap. You're going to pay that money. They're hacking smart TVs now, right? So it's a lot of opportunity for an entrepreneur to get in and do that particular work. Now, if you're a veteran or, did some work and you got a security clearance, I mean, sky's the limit. So it just kind of is based upon your imagination. I give you an example. I know Frank's on, and Frank and I used to have conversations regarding mainframe, right? There's this guy, all he does do cybersecurity training on mainframes. And he does it, he used to do it at Black Hat USA in Las Vegas, and he has about 100, 200 people in the room. Now, the class is actually about $4 or $5 grand. I don't know how much money he takes from it, but if it's $2 grand, he got 100 people. And he's just making that on the weekend to teach mainframe security because that's a lost art, right? So that goes back to retooling his skill set and saying, okay, here's a niche market for it. There's another guy that does SAP, cybersecurity. That's all he does. If you talk to him about databases, he doesn't know what you're talking about, right? You're talking about Windows or Linux. No, I just know SAP. There's one guy, his name is David. I can't think of his last name, but his whole career was hacking Oracle because he was in an audience in like 1990 something, and the guy who founded Oracle said that their database can't be hacked, unlike Microsoft SQL. He went home 2 days later, said, you know what? It can be hacked. And he's written books, did seminars. That's all he did. And I think he retired like 2 or 3 years ago. And the commentary was like, that's probably the best gift that Oracle ever had was this guy retiring, because that was his claim to fame. So that was his niche. So I think from an entrepreneur that the sky's the limit because some people are just kind of, they're naturally lazy, particularly when it comes to security. And maybe because they just don't know what they don't know. So not because they're lazy, because they're just trifling. It's just lazy because they don't know enough to be more proactive at doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm. One of the things I do at Divine is we try to talk with the diverse business community, and we've done it for a number of organizations. We did it for AT&T. I actually did it for HCSC. They invited all their suppliers in. And one of the things that I found is because we're a small, diverse company, it seems like they listen to us more. But the thing that we have to remember about security is not all technology, right? It's about people, it's about processes, and then you overlay security around that, right? Overlay the things around your technical pieces around that. And so from an entrepreneur perspective and a small business perspective, when it comes to the people and the training and those things, those are some of the things that you don't have to pay for. You can actually go out on the internet and find ways to train your people, videos, etc., on what not to do, right? So that's part of it. And the next thing is some of the processes that you need in place. And again, you can easily get that off the internet as well and kind of put in some processes that you have in place. And then the last thing is the technology, and you might end up paying for that. But I think that, Otha just talked about people that kind of specialize and people that specialize. I met a gentleman, he's got his business he runs from Texas, but that's all he does. He caters to the small mom and pop shops, and he's making a very good living just being there. I'll call him more like a virtual CISO, just telling them what they need to do and what they need to have in place, and they're paying him a monthly fee for this. So there's a number of ways, especially as you start to look at this space, that you can earn a living from an entrepreneur perspective, from a specialist perspective, as Otha talked about in many of his conversations, where you just focus on a certain segment within IT, and then you build your security intelligence around that, or you can broaden your experience and look at just governance, right? Just audit, and use your background to help drive your career in that. And I know we're going to end up finishing early today because we had a gentleman that did not make it, unfortunately. But Otha, could you kind of start to close us out a little bit and talk about, because a lot of people used to always want to say, "Oh, I want to be a CIO because I can make that big money." How much money? What's the upside potential that you think that someone could see when they're at the top of their career in cybersecurity from an income basis?
That's a good question, and not to say I'm driven by money or greed, but you got to pay the bills. And like I said, everyone should be 3 jobs away from making 150. If you're not in cybersecurity, right? Or I just think in IT in general, right? So I think when I tell the high school students and stuff when they ask me about salary, I tell them, look, you're going to make as much money as the guy sitting on the bench for an NBA team before they did this most recent collective bargaining, right? So you're aiming from 75,000 to 250. You can make that. If you do security sales, then you're looking at probably 150, 350. So the sky's the limit. And the beautiful thing about when you were younger, when you're going for a job, you didn't even know what the salary requirement was. You had to guess. Now with Indeed, because it lists the salary, you can try to figure out that, look, this is a very lucrative field. And if you work for companies such as, Google, they pay their interns probably like 80,000, 75. They pay the interns, but some people make as a real salary, right? So some companies have problems getting interns because everybody wants to work for Google, right? Or Apple or any place in Silicon Valley. So the amount of money that you can make is ridiculous, right? But like I say, you should be making from at least starting off 75 to at least 150. I got a young lady entry level. She makes about 90,000. She has a master's degree, but she has only one intern based upon security, and that was like maybe for 4 or 6 weeks. But she's been doing help desk, right? And then she was talking to salary with one of her coworkers, and he made more than her, and he only had a bachelor's degree. So that's how it gets one time. I remember years ago, and this had to be like in the early 2000s. I remember I was making 125, and I got a bachelor's degree. I was in law school for a year, and I got a master's degree. This guy has a high school diploma, and him and I are making the exact same thing. Something's wrong with that, right? Him and I, friends to this day, but it's like his path and my path was completely different because when we were taught growing up, if you want a degree in computer science, a job in computer science, you had to have a degree in computer science. You got to know math and not just algebra, but, physics and trigonometry and all this other BS, right? But the reality is that you can count 1, 2, 3, you're good. Add and subtract. That's all I need. And so those are the things that you have to think about. But the salary is ridiculous, But I would expect one, starting off with 75 to 90, and think about it. If they don't want you, it's okay because there's so many other jobs out there, So I told you the story about this guy at this bank. What if they didn't hire him? Now, you're interviewing this guy, and you're like, he has no background. I don't know what his problem is. He's not qualified for this job. But then you tell him, look, your username and password is out there on the internet. So that means, 1, he knows your username and password. 2, you're going to tell him, since you're managing cybersecurity team, that, look, you have cross-site scripting out there since 2014. You're like, I don't know what this guy's going to do if I fire him or not hire him. So I at least want to have him on my team, So when you go in for these interviews, you just have to demand what you want, and I remember the first time I asked for somebody for $150. You know what the guy told me? He said, "That's more money than I'm making." And he was a manager. And I said, "Well, you get what you pay for. I didn't tell you to go into management." That's your problem. You know, and they ended up hiring me. So, but you have to be persistent with your salary. And then sometimes you have to think, okay, are they going to hire me or not? And I remember, and some of you guys, you know, I tell the story about I was being laid off at a startup, and I was having lunch with this guy, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, I only work for $100,000. And I was like, I can't believe he does that. But he said, "Look, I spent a year of my life," and he was a Solaris administrator, so he was a Unix guy. He said, "I took a year of my life at University of Chicago, and this is all I did. Every time there was a trouble ticket or an issue, I'm the guy that solved that. I didn't have a social life for a year, so I only worked for $100,000. And then he told me, "I don't even wear a suit to an interview." And I was like, damn, I couldn't do that. And he said, "Why not?" So I found me a job working at a university. I didn't wear a suit I did wear a suit to my interview. And there was another guy interviewing for the same position. He didn't even have a suit on. He had some khakis and a wrinkled shirt, and they actually hired him. So they actually hired me as a senior network engineer, and he was a junior network engineer. But that told me that, look, if you know your stuff, people will hire you. And if they don't hire you, so what? That's their loss. You know, like I said, I got my first job, never even touched a Cisco router. I told another friend of mine the same story. He got his first job, never touched a Juniper router because he was a Juniper guy. Mm-hmm. So it can happen. And he asked for like $75,000. You know, and he didn't have a degree, no certification, didn't know what Juniper was, and he got a job. So I would say starting off, you know, don't even do 75, just do 85 and see what they say. You know, because if they can pay you 85, they can pay you 90 because most jobs have a salary range. And sometimes I tell people now when they meet me on LinkedIn, they'll say, "Oh, like tech systems, they know not to only ask me for certain jobs." And they'll say, "Well, do you know anybody that's qualified?" And I tell them, look, all my friends work for $150 because some people, they don't want to ask for that job themselves, but they know that I'm serious. You know, we're taught not to talk about salary up front. That's the first thing I talk about. So, and I have a low end range. My low end range is like 185. My high end is like 250. And people ask me, "Well, why you have a range?" I said, it depends upon what kind of person you want. If you want somebody that's going to do above and beyond of what they're supposed to do, you're going to pay me more. You're going to pay around 185 and plus. Now, if you want somebody to make you look good so you can spend money on your mistress and your wife and send your daughter to boarding school, then you're going to pay me $250. So if you increase the quality of my life, I will increase the quality of your life, you know, and salary is nothing but negotiation, you know, and if you prove yourself, then they'll hire you, you know. You have to know your niche. You know, when I had the opportunity to speak in Jordan, right, and there was a lot of opportunities that came from that, and some guys saw me speak at a conference in Indianapolis, right, and then from Jordan, some guy wants me to talk in Dubai and go to Palestine and talk. I'm like, man, I'm a world traveler now. But it all started from the fact that I have a gift for gab. But then also when you think about it, from a security professional, or they always want somebody that's a go-getter or passionate about what they're doing. So I can tell you when I go to my YouTube channel, you know, just start. I got like 3 or 4 videos, but it's stuff that we do from the class. So if you want to know my work, you see me teaching people about how to create malware on a Windows machine, you know, or how to do threat intelligence. So that aids into my work to say, look, I'm just not a guy that's going to, you know, get paid X, Y, Z. You know, I went to a company I interviewed. They said, this company, like, they don't pay people $100,000. And it's like the only company since I realized I can make $100,000 plus that I didn't talk about salary up front. So I went in, did the interview, and I had some documentation that I did. So the guy interviews me, and I pulled out my documentation because stereotype. Most technical people don't want to write. So I showed them the documentation, and it had to be like 11:30, and he wants to have a 2-hour conversation with me. And so I'm walking out, I'm leaving. We spend like maybe an hour and a half in the parking lot talking. But guess what? They paid me what I want because they'd never seen documentation like that before. But I knew that was one of my niches that, look, in that same company now, they still use my documentation. They just revise it. And I told them, look, you pay me $150 an hour, I'll revise it for you. But those are the things that you have to think about, how marketable you are. I do presentations now, right? And my security presentations are completely different than the standard presentation. And I got people saying, wow, I want you to do my presentation. So as an entrepreneur, look, if you're going to pay me money to do a PowerPoint for you, yeah, okay, $175. It's going to take me about 20 hours to do it. But it's going to be cool as hell. It's going to be better than what they have because most people now with this COVID, you got to sit in front of a computer and I can woo you if I go to lunch and talk shop with you. But now as an engineer, they're going to have so many meetings, you have to stand out. So the way you stand out is about what do your PowerPoint look like? It's going to captivate them. Security and IT people, they want a specific PowerPoint. They want a specific presentation. They want movie themes, TV themes. They don't want the boring stuff, right? So those are the things that you have to think about as an entrepreneur, but it also adds values to yourself. So when you start looking for, jobs and things of that nature, look, you have already a body of work, and they're paying for that body of work. And if they want to pay for it, so what? There's somebody else that will. And if you can't find anything in a year or 6 months, just go to the dark side of the force.
So we spent a lot of time in this conversation, and we talked about a number of things, right? We talked about a 40-plus-year-old organization that is dedicated to people of color and helping them get entrenched in technology and helping them grow their career. And as you heard, Otha, how long have you been around BDPA, just in general?
Wow, 1998, 99. That's I moved from Memphis to Chicago to go to grad school, and I became a member of BDPA. I was introduced to BDPA in Memphis, but at the time Memphis didn't have a strong chapter, so I joined. I think I want to say Ricky Pennant was the president then.
Okay.
And this is when Farad Ali and Allstate had a big presence. Juanita, Robinson, Yvette, they were all members of BDPA, and it definitely has helped me out a lot, just learning from people. Ricky Pennant was the guy that told me that you have to learn how to learn technology. And I thought that was very profound to figure out that everyone learns differently. I remember Ricky Pennant and A.W. Bowden, who just recently passed, and Farad, they would have these little debate conversations about Linux and Windows and which one's the best. I remember they had this thing called the $100,000 Club. It wasn't an official club in BDPA, but it was the guys who make $100,000. And I remember asking them, how do I get in the club? And it was like, it's simple. $100,000, you get in the club, So BDPA has definitely helped me out. I remember when I was trying to get employed at one point, when I was working for a bunch of startups, Farad Ali was the guy that actually hired me to work at a startup that he was working at. And he was the one that kind of coached me into, look, you need to make sure that you're always current and, learn HTML. I'm like, I'm a Cisco guy. Why don't you learn HTML? But that has helped me out. And he also said, strengthen my Linux background. And that has helped me out during my career, And so BDPA has always helped out, just seeing guys who are perfecting their craft, Frank is another guy, he's been around for a while, mainframe guy, and I would never know as much understanding of mainframe if I didn't know him, because I'm thinking mainframe, the dead technology, wasn't it Y2K? But people need mainframes. And IBM has a program where they're actually trying to teach people how to do mainframe because guess what? You can't learn it at DeVry or Stanford or DePaul. So BDPA has definitely helped me out. And like it is $100. So if I spend $100, but I can make $100,000, and it's not a Ponzi scheme, that's a pretty good return on my investment.
Yeah, very true. We've also spent time talking about, a technology space that is really just on fire. I can't think of another way to talk about the security space other than it is on fire. And what does that mean? That means that there is opportunity for the novice person to get in at an entry level and start to make that climb from a very good salary to an awesome salary, depending on what they want to do. But I think it's also a space where the person that wants to get retooled, right? If you're, as Karen mentioned earlier in her walk, she was looking more at testing and things of that nature, and she wanted to get broaden her knowledge and move into cyber and what that's done for her career. And I think about just the upside of where this space is going, because Otha alluded to a number of things that these hackers are and professional hackers are doing. And one of the things we didn't talk about is, it used to be a guy sitting in his basement that was hacking everyone, corporations, individuals. Now what they're doing is they're using computers to go out and hack you. So they've upped their game. We've got to up our game. And people that get into this space, you can help the corporations or the businesses that you work for up their game in protection. So I don't see any questions out here in the chat. I want to make sure before we close out.
Before we close, Reggie.
Yes.
We did have, Chicago chapter did have a program for November that has not come to fruition. So one of the things I ask, if you have anything that you're interested in for a November program meeting, if you can email me. Email is it@chicagobdpa.org. If we get some interest in a particular topic and we can pull it together, then we may do that. If not, we will not have a November program meeting, but we will have a December holiday gathering by virtually. So
Wine and whiskey and your Zoom. Olga, I can't thank you enough for your presence tonight in the conversation. Everyone online here, I thank you for your participation and your ears. I asked again that each of you take an opportunity to, in the next 2 weeks, just talk to 10 people that come to you and say, man, I'm not making enough money, or man, I hate my job. Talk to them about this space. Talk to them about how they can do, make the crossover into this arena and start to maybe earn the money they want to earn, or have a job that they're a little happier with because they're a major contributor to an organization, or they started their own business and they're an entrepreneur. So I'd ask that everybody leave here with that in mind. And I thank everybody for joining tonight. Brian, did you have anything else?
No, have a great evening. If you didn't get the links that Otha put in the chat, I'm not going to close the session immediately to give you some time to grab them. So,
all right. Thank you for allowing me to speak. And thanks a lot for the opportunity just to be hanging out with you guys. It was fun. All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
good night.
Good night, and thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you guys for having me as well.
Good night.